Welcome back. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. And now on our second hot topic, we're looking at the off-season election post-mortem on Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa. My guest today is Mark Amaza, the Senior Communications Manager at Yaga Africa. Good morning, Mark. Nice to have you with us on The Breakfast today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I know you've been monitoring the elections, and I'm sure you're in Abuja. What do you think? Where are we right now? We can see that Hope Uzodinma has been declared the winner for Imo State, and Ahmed has been declared the winner for Kogi. Bayelsa is yet to be released. What do you have to say with all of the election processes and how they've been able to, just say that these are the winners so far?
Well, so like you rightly said, we have the results for Kogi and Imo, but we're awaiting the ones from Bayelsa. All we can see so far is, well, there's been some improvement in some regard, especially with regards to logistics and deployment in the elections. We saw that being done better. We saw improvement in opening of polls, commission of polls. However, we saw overall low voter turnout and also observed some irregularities in the election. Especially in Imo and Kogi, where we had polling unit observers. We had situations where, for example, in Kogi, 2 polling units where observers saw pre-filled result sheets. We saw in Imo places where there were no elections and yet results were being uploaded to the INEC results viewing portal for that state. By the way, the INEC results, electronic transmission results, is also an improvement, considering that during the general elections for the presidential, that didn't work. So we see an improvement in that regard. But then there are also these irregularities, like I mentioned, and then there are also cases of vote buying across the states.
So your assessment generally would be that the INEC has improved, or that there's still a lot to be done?
Well, there's still a lot to be done in terms of ensuring these irregularities do not happen. And that will be very, very important how we move forward from this in terms of the way we deal, pardon my word for use of that word, those who are engaged in these malpractices, whether it's in terms of the pre-filled results sheet or how we have results for polling units where there are no elections being uploaded. Because that will send a strong message for future elections in terms of how politicians, party officials, candidates, and even INEC officials themselves conduct themselves.
So what is your opinion about the fact that some people have been declared winners in places where we have irregularities? Do you think INEC was hasty, or you think they were in order?
Well, I would rather leave that answer for the courts to look into, whether if the candidates feel aggrieved to file petitions. But what we do know is we have actually called on INEC to look into the irregularities that we mentioned. That conversation, whether those irregularities were significant enough to change the course of the elections, is something that matter for the courts to decide. So I can't go into that conversation. But it's very, very important that INEC looks into this, because beyond just the ones we observed, there have been other similar incidents being mentioned by citizens, and it's important they look into it so the credibility of the elections is not affected, and because it has a lot of implication for other elections down the line.
Okay, so far, would you say that these elections have been credible, especially coming from the 2023 general election? So for this, what would be your rating?
Again, I can't give a rating yet. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait. So we have the Bayelsa results, so that we give an overall rating, okay. And it will also make our statement where we verify the results based on our election observation methodology. We are looking at process and results, and after that, we're able to now compare those with what INEC declares, to be able to confirm or to make our final observations on the credibility of the elections. So it's a little bit too early to give a final verdict on our own part.
Okay, so permit me to go off tangent a little bit. We know that this is the off-cycle elections, and former President Goodluck Jonathan had made a statement. He talked about we having off-cycle elections and called it odd and not the global best practice, because he cited the 2007 election with late former President Musa Yar'Adua, saying that the court at the time, they had about 7 judges, and 3 of those said the election should be annulled, and the other 4 said it should be sustained. Now, if one had crossed over, what would have happened is that that election would have been annulled, and by now the presidential election would have become an off-cycle election. And he says that is not even a best practice for us as a country, because we should know these are the times the elections should happen. So what can we do now with all of these states? We have about 8 states, 7 to 8 states or so: Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa, Ondo, Ekiti, all of that. What can we do? What can the National Assembly do for us to bring them back into the same time with all of the other states?
Well, first of all, I disagree with the former president that it's odd that we're having off-cycle elections. In many countries around the world, elections don't happen in a staggered manner. For example, in the United States, while they had the presidential elections in 2020, and they're also planning for the next one in 2024, they have midterm elections. They had elections just last week too for certain states. We see that all the time in many countries. So Nigeria's case is not a peculiarity. And I also think off-cycle elections in a way can be a blessing in disguise, in the sense that it allows us to test new electoral laws. For example, after the Electoral Act was amended last year, the first opportunity to test it was in the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections prior to the general elections. And that was a good opportunity to see how it was being applied, and then to fine-tune where the application or the implementation was not being done rightly. Though, so it's not necessarily a bad thing that you have off-cycle elections. Another thing we can also look at is it also allows or reduces the chances of what we call bandwagon voting, where people just vote for a party across the board without necessarily knowing the candidates down the ballot. So when you have off-cycle elections or off-season elections, it allows citizens to be able to better at, maybe let me use the word, cherry-picking candidates from different parties that they want to vote for. The only chance we have, there's no way we can harmonize those elections to be the same date, because the constitution is clear-cut that a 4-year term begins from when a swearing has been done. So, and these off-cycle elections in 9 states didn't happen because elections were either invalidated and new ones were ordered by the Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court declared different people as winners right from when winners different from rules that INEC had declared at the end of the elections. So we are not going to see that reharmonization, because that would then mean one candidate, an office holder, doing either more or less than the 4 years prescribed by the Constitution.
Okay, well, before we wrap up, I'll just I want to find out if there are lessons that come from that you got from this off-season election that was held on Saturday, because I also understand that PlusTvAfrica is passionate about amending again the electoral law to fit some things that were missing or that were not complete in the 2021 electoral law. So what are the lessons that you learned from the off-season election that was just held in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo?
All right, so I wouldn't want to jump the gun to start talking about recommendations we have learned, because these are all the things we'll release as part of our final statements verifying the results. But I can speak to the recommendations we made from the general elections. Yes, we are still looking to see how pushing for a reform of the electoral legal framework. Reforms are not an activity; they are an ongoing process. We don't just reform and then we believe the work has been done. So for one, a very, very important recommendation we're making, not a new one by the way, but has been done since 2008, is that to have the constitution amended to remove the appointment of officials for INEC, remove that power from the president. That should be done by an independent body, because we have seen this case time and again where we have nominees or people appointed to INEC and they are partisan. We saw that recently, just some weeks ago, when we had new recs and at least 3 were only partisan. We saw that last year. We had new recs. Some of them we had question marks about their credibility or integrity. And even when you were ignored, we saw what played out in some states during the election, and those were some of the recs that we raised an alarm over. So that's very, very important. We also see a need to institutionalize the electronic transmission of results. While the Electoral Act 2022 allowed INEC to transmit results, it didn't mandate them. And we've seen, leaving that at the discretion of INEC does not bode well for what we desire, the transparency of elections that we desire to show voters, to show citizens, so that it can improve their confidence in the process. And even the Senate agrees with that. They also made that call. We're going to see a lot more recommendations. This is a conversation that I just started, and we hope that all Nigerian citizens be part of that conversation. It's not just between YAGA and National Assembly, it's Nigerian citizens and the National Assembly and the stakeholders, where we have to bring to the table ideas for how we can strengthen our electoral legal framework. From every election, there are lessons that can be learned and can be used to strengthen this electoral legal framework. Again, not a peculiarity for Nigeria, but even in the most advanced democracies, we're going to see those continuous changes, and it's all part of safeguarding and improving and strengthening democracy.
Okay, so if we're going to say there was one lesson that was learned from this election, what would you say?
Again, I don't want to jump the gun.
What?
Mark is being careful.
I'm really being careful here. I don't want to jump the gun to start talking about lessons, but this will make known very soon in the next, before the end of the day even.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
We can't wait to get that report from you and all other monitors that were there. Thank you, Mark, for being a part of our program today. That was Mark Amaza, Senior Communications Manager, YAGA Africa, talking about the off-season elections that were held on Saturday, Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa State. We'll hear what will come out of it and how many litigations we will have, because there are bound to be a lot of cases in the courts, and what will it be about? So this matter has not ended. We'll keep looking at the developments and bring them to you as the time goes on. Yeah. Well, today is just Monday. You still have about 4 days before you can turn up anywhere. We'll be coming to work every day. But we do hope that this week is going to be a good one. Yes. Someone said dollar is losing and the naira is gaining. I don't know how true that is, but so long as it's still above 1,000 naira, I don't see any gain. I don't see any gain there. Right. On the one hand, there are people who are amassing dollar and hoping to change it on the black market and make profit. I don't know if they're happy about the dollar losing.
I'm sure people who probably do like remote work as well, who earn in dollars, would be happy about it. But someone like me, the ordinary citizen, it's not favorable.
I want a situation where the dollar will be 1 naira.
Is that? Can we get there?
Well, there used to be a time where the dollar was a lot lower than maybe like
slightly,
60 kobo to a dollar. And then there was a time I saw an old newspaper cutout where Britain had to come borrow money from Nigeria. So things like that have happened at one point in our history. So it can still happen. It's just because, like the first speaker said, or the second guest we had said, we need good leaders. Yes. It's leadership that is a problem here.
Yeah. And we will not give up. We will not give up.
Nigeria is
ours.
Keep
thriving.
That's the size of our package for today. We'd like to thank you for being a part of that program. Let's do it again tomorrow. My name is Nyamgul Agaji.
My name is Rume Paulson. Have a good day.